Good morning, this is Professor Menton, and I wanted to take a few moments to start familiarizing you with Media Moguls. And let me just say from the very beginning here that there will probably be three, maybe even four videos that I will have to do here. And that's largely because if I get the video too large, it's going to take forever to render. And secondly, I think that it's easier to do them in shorter bursts, like 15, 20-minute kind of things. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to actually create the business, and we're going to do this in Wave, a software called Wave, which you will download onto your computer, and then when you're done with the course, if you want to toss it, that's fine. But we have to have something in which to record this information. Now, Wave is a fairly new company. I've used them now for 3 or 4 semesters, so I know that they're a good company that will perform the accounting entries like we need them to. So the first thing you need to do is to go out to waveapps.com, waveapps.com. And once you get there, you'll be given an opportunity to either sign in, which you won't be able to do yet because you haven't created the business yet, or the Wave presence. But then once you have done that, then you'll be able to go in on a continuing basis through the sign-in, of course. So you're going to create a new business. And so I've already got the Media Moguls business created. And I don't want to disturb any of the entries that I have in there, so I'm going to create a second Media Moguls here, and you'll call it Summer. In your case, you can type in Media Moguls and your last name. So without further ado here, that's what I'm going to give my new entry here and walk you through this part of it. So once you have the name, and remember this is a video, so you can stop it at any time if you're not quite ready to go to this place. But once you have the name, you're going to give it a type of business, and they have several pre-created templates, and this one is really kind of a media business, so we'll just call it that. Okay. Let's see what this drop down does here. Advertising, public relations, marketing, social media, and we can call it marketing social media. That's fine. It doesn't really matter that much, honestly, what you put in there. It's just something that helps them kind of help you develop a template. So we're going to use business currency, US dollar, of course. And in this case, we're going to call this a sole proprietorship. Now, we could call it a partnership or a corporation, but probably this is an LLC, and they're not giving us that opportunity. So we'll just call it a sole proprietorship for now, and that way we don't run into a lot of the issues that we might if we had a partnership or a or a corporation. Now, as long as I'm on this topic, let me just mention to you that in the state of Georgia, if you want to create an LLC, which stands for Limited Liability Company, not corporation, Limited Liability Company, if you want to create one of those, you have to do so by March the 15th of the year that you're creating the company, or that you're starting the company, if you want an LLC. Otherwise, they automatically assign you as a LLP, which is a limited liability partnership. Okay, so hit the save button. And you'll notice that I already have a Media Mogul sitting out there. So I'm going to come over here and just click on this. And that gives you some opportunities to put in an address, and you can do that if you choose to do that. I don't see any of these being a requirement. So I'm not going to add any of the information that they're asking for here. State. Missed one. Alright, we're in the state of Georgia, so find Georgia. And I think that should be it. All right. Business was successfully updated, created, whatever. Okay, so the next thing is I'm just going to walk you through some of these things. And the first one we probably want to look at is the launch pad. And so it says, what do you want to do today? And payroll, better bookkeeping, professional invoicing, none of that. Okay, we don't want to do any of that. So let's pop over here to dashboard. I'm just walking through this so you can see what we have here. And in this case, here's the dashboard, which has lots and lots of great things on it. Okay, so it has a cash flow, cash coming in and out of the business, and you'll use some of that. It has profit and loss, or the income statement as we refer to it. What's on the income statement? Only revenue and expenses. Only revenue and expenses. So don't mess that up. We're going to add some customers, add vendors, customize invoices, and all of those sorts of things. We'll do all of that. Then we have our payables and owing, and now we have to do this in a specific way because some of the features that Wave has will not operate unless you pay for them. And so I figured a workaround so that we don't have to pay for anything. And please, none of you pay for anything. This is just simply a teaching tool that I've used QuickBooks in the past. They work very similarly. So just be aware of that. Now, this is your net income, and notice what they have. Income, that's revenue, expense, and the net income. It could be a net loss. Okay. Down here, they'll give you some of the expenses. All right. I'm going to pop down here to accounting, and you can look at the rest of these. I mean, do whatever you want to do. What we'll be working with is the transactions for the most part, and we'll be working at working with and notice, hire an in-house expert. No, we don't want to do that. Okay. So transactions are where we're going to post most of our information. We do have to work with the chart of accounts some, and notice that they have a pre-existing chart of accounts, and we'll get back to that in a few moments. But some of these we will use, some of these we will not, but we'll be doing a lot of adding a new account. Okay, and we have cash on hand here, which is fine. You can use cash on hand as the cash account. There's no reason not to do that. If you notice up here at the top, you can cursor your way over. So if you have a new account to add that is a liability, you do it over here, a new expense account, and equity, and so forth. Okay, so mostly we'll be doing just the ones that are already pre-existing for us. We're doing this on a quite simplified basis, so I'm not trying to teach you how to do all of the things that you might have to do ordinarily in a business. I'm just trying to get you a bit of familiarity with this, with these things. Okay. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to come over and look at the Media Moguls practice set itself, which you will have in your content section, and it'll all be under Media Moguls practice set. And I'll probably launch that for you today. I may not get these videos all done today, but I'll probably load as many as I can get done today for you. I have some things that are going on later this afternoon that will prevent me from getting too awfully far. And so here's your Media Moguls practice set in Word, and my phone's blowing up right now for some reason. But you know, it just tells you a little bit about the company, and it tells you that you are an accountant for the company. You've just been hired, and they expect great things from you. It tells you that Media Moguls is a service-oriented company. Now, the reason that we did it as a service-oriented company initially is because the first 4 chapters only deal with service companies. So, and so that's why you're only looking at the service company side of it at this point. It will expand over the course of time, but not for you. Okay. um, Again, the owner has indicated your first task will be set the company up using Wave. Owner provided you with a copy of the trial balance as of June the 31st, for which from which you are to make the opening entries. And I already see that this should be June the 1st, so I'm going to drop that. And I'm going to have to save it so I make sure I give you the right copy. All right, so the owner is a proponent of having as much relevant and reliable information as possible, so he will expect you to turn these financial statements around fairly quickly. Well, that's information that just is not important to you. It's just stuff that you put that I put out there just to keep it more realistic. Oftentimes you have very strict deadlines about how many days you have after the end of the month to create your financial statements. You have the due dates that are available to you in your syllabus. Okay. So the first thing that they ask us to do is set up the following customers. Jones Building Supply, 1 Tifton Way, Tifton, Georgia, and number these 120A, 120B, etc. And 120 is the 120 is actually accounts receivable. So we need to have subsidiary receivables for all of these other ones. Okay, so that we know not just that we know how much we're owed in total, but we have to know how much each individual company owes us. So if we popped back over to the to Wave, and let's go back to our dashboard here, and we want to add a customer, and the account number in this first case will be 120-1, and whoops, I'm sorry, well, that's fine, it can still be there. The customer is Jones Building Supply. So you'll get that right off of the Word document that you've been provided. Primary contact, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Just you can call it John, last name Jones. And you don't have to do email or phone. It's not required. So we can leave that off. If you were doing this in the real world, of course, you would have as much information out there as you can. For a lot of different reasons, mostly marketing reasons, so that you can contact them by phone if you need to. You can, and maybe even include things in some cases like birthdays, so number of children, all of those sorts of things, so that you can continue to make contact without looking like you're selling something every time you make a contact. The billing currency, of course, is United States dollar. Okay, billing address, I think I set that up as 1 Tifton Way. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. And the city is Tifton, of course. 31793. And ship to the name, it's not important because we're not in the business of shipping. We are in the service business, so we're not going to be shipping anything. And none of those you see are required, so we're good. And just save it. Okay? And now we see that Jones Building Supply has been set up. They don't owe us anything at this point. The reason is because we haven't done any transactions at this point. Now, going back again to Launchpad. Dashboard. I always get those two confused. We have lots and lots of vendors that you need to set up, and you can just go into the, let me pop back over here to the Media Moguls. I've given you, I don't know, 5, maybe 6 customers Just set them all up at once. And I made it very simple. One Tifton Way, two Tifton Way. Levinson equipment, they're going to be 120-2. And Mary Contrary Argument Services is going to be 120-3, and so forth. Okay? And just create them like just the same way that I created the first one. Now we want to do the same thing for vendors. Joey Johnson's Motors, 1 Friendly City Avenue, Tifton, Georgia, like that. So I'm going to go back over here, add a vendor. A vendor is somebody that we get something from, and we have to pay them. And so it's Levinson Equipment. First name, John Levinson. Sally Levinson, I don't care. Currency, US dollar. Province address 1 is 1 Friendly City Way. City, Tifton. And the postal code 31793 again. And save it. And if you wanted to add some, you notice down there at the bottom, if you wanted to add some additional information, you could have done that there. Okay? Now, you notice right here next to them, there's this create a bill. Okay? In our case, what we're going to do is we're going to do all of this stuff because you haven't got into subsidiary ledgers and you haven't gotten into specific journals that do sales and do receivable cash receipts and all that sort of thing. We're going to do everything through the general journal because that's all at this point that you have seen. Okay, so don't worry about creating the bill there. We're not going to do that. Okay, and now you'll go through and you'll create all of these others just to get an understanding. And this is the way that it works, by the way, in the real world. You have to create all your vendors when you first get started. Some significant information for you to consider. The land was financed through Friendly City Land Management over 180 months. The cost of the land was $250,000. Mr. Mogul paid $50,000 down and financed the rest over 180 months at 6% per annum. Okay? And all of this is information that you will need if you were having to calculate all this stuff, and you're not really asked to do that in this particular class. If you're taking the 2102 class and you work through this, you'll be asked to calculate these principal and interest payments. So I think in your case I've given them all to you. I'm going to pop over here real quick because we're talking about some of these things, and let me just take a quick look here at Media Moguls, the trial balance. Now remember, the trial balance is when you're going out to each of your ledger accounts. In other words, there's a ledger account out here for petty cash. There's a ledger account for cash. In the real world, it's sitting out there. Okay? Notice that accounts receivable here is just a single item. So what we would have to do is come down here, and if you're going down the left hand side here where you see the 10, which is just below accounts receivable, you're going to right click it and insert, and it's going to insert a place for you to add something else. In this case, 120-1. And 120-1 is I'm not sure why that's not getting in the right place. Doesn't matter that. That's just me being a little bit anal. But so the first one that we put up was Jones Building Supplies. So Jones Building Supplies. We don't have anything in there yet. Okay, but we would have to add it here. And as you add the rest of them, you just do the same thing. Come to 11, right click, insert, come to 12, right click, insert, until you get all of your customers in there. And then you would come down here to current liabilities, and if you look down current liability, you see 200 here. That's accounts payable. So you would want to insert, and you're going to have 200-1, and that's going to be Levinson. What I'm doing now is just justifying them all to the right. And so Levinson equipment. And of course you don't have anything in here yet because there aren't any current liabilities existent at this point. What you're looking at, just if I can back up just for a second, what you're looking at is the trial balance. So we went to every ledger account, whatever balance was in that ledger account, we picked up and we put on this trial balance. Now typically in a trial balance you don't see these headings that I've bolded. I'm just kind of putting them out here as bolding so that you get a better feel for what constitutes an asset, what constitutes a current asset, what constitutes a current liability or long-term liability, and that sort of thing. So what happened was we went, or the accountant went out and went to that ledger, the general ledger, and he picked up, if it was cash, this is what he picked up. So it means the total debit in cash was $35,625. And the same thing for every one of these. Notice that the land is sitting out here at $250,000. If I go back over here just for a second to this, you notice that the land had a cost of $250,000. Mr. Mogul paid $50,000 down, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still out there at $250,000. That's what he actually paid for it. It doesn't matter what he paid down. That's just some additional information that I put out there to let you know that there's going to be a difference between this number and the $200,000 that's remaining that you would be paying for over 180 months. So, and when we come down here at the bottom, after I picked up everything, here's your owner's capital. Remember, you can't, and this is what this essentially is this is your opening entry. Just like we did before when we put $30,000 in cash in, and so we increased our cash by $30,000, and we increased our owner's equity by $30,000, and this was at the very start in chapter 2. All this is that entry that you would normally make to start your business. So it has to be in balance. And notice that it's in balance, $818,125,000 on both sides. Notice also that there's a whole bunch of blank spaces here because we're going to add some expenses as we go. And you already know kind of how to do that, because if you went back up here to your dashboard, you have opportunities to do this kind of thing. Or you go to accounting, if you don't see it there, and chart of accounts, and here is where you can add these as well. When you start making entries, if you don't have some of these things in there, you'll have to create them. So in other words, if I have an entry for depreciation expense and I don't have the two sides to that entry set up as accumulated depreciation on the credit side and depreciation expense on the debit side, if I don't have those, then I have to create them. But they're very easy to create. You just put the next number in the sequence on them and do it the same way that we did the customers. Okay, and I'll get maybe in the second video I'll show you some of that as well. You can also do that on the fly, but see up here where it says add a new account, you can do that there, and when we're making transactions we can do it there as well. Okay, so let me pop back over here to this trial balance, and notice down here at the bottom there's a thing called amortization schedules. And for you all, as opposed to the 2102 people, I have created all of the principal and interest numbers as well as the payment. Now I'm going to walk you through how that was calculated, and I'll walk you through how this was calculated, how these amortization schedules were calculated, just so you can get a feel for it. I remember many years ago I decided to buy a little piece of property um, around Swainsboro, Georgia, and when I did, the guy had an ad out there, and I said, well, I can't afford to pay for it all at once, so I approached him with an amortization schedule where I gave him some interest. And so you'll learn how to do that. This is also a very handy tool for letting you know, say, how much a house is going to cost you in terms of its interest and principal. Now, it doesn't cover your escrow balances, your insurance, um, your real estate taxes, those sorts of things. It doesn't cover those. This is simply your interest and principal alone. So if you look at this payment up here, which shows as a negative number, and it shows as a negative number because that's an outflow. Okay, that's what your actual cash out is going to be, and I'll walk you through those entries as to how you do them when we get toward the um, end of the presentation in probably segment 3. Okay. So anyway, all of this stuff don't get confused and don't get rattled by all these numbers. They are, for the most part, for you, meaningless. The only one you're going to consider is June. The June numbers. You're not going to consider any of the others. The others have no meaning for you. Okay? So don't get all excited about all of these numbers that you're going to see. It's just what we have to do in order to do an amortization schedule. So let's just take, for example, this building. Okay, if I come down here to the very bottom of the buildings, you notice that the balance after everything is said and done is 0. And if you'll look down, you'll see that the interest is constantly decreasing and the principal is constantly increasing, until you get down to the last payment where the interest is only $11 and the principal is 22, almost $2,300. Okay, so we'll go through some of that. Don't get excited about all these numbers. That they're really not going to apply to you anyway. Okay, and if you were doing 2102, the only difference is you have to make this first calculation here, and you have to make this calculation. I'm going to show you how to do that too. So maybe if you remember it when you take your 2102, those of you who do, you'll be able to see that pop up for you. Okay. So I think for right now, for this first one, it's important that you get at least all of your information downloaded. Go out to content, and I'll push this out here today. Go out to content and download the all the information that's there for you, the Word document, the Excel document, and so forth. And then I'll start another video where I start walking you through the transactions, which is the next step. And thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And I will then talk to you very shortly.